Welcome back to Audible Archives. I'm Rob, your host, and today we enter the turning point of Runeborn. The battles of the jungle are behind us. Now, whispers stalk palace halls, cabals weave their webs, and the shadow of prophecy coils tighter around Herman Runeborn. His hunt leads to the Black Citadel, where truth is more dangerous than lies, and the chains of blood bind more than just kingdoms. Stay with us, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, because in these chapters, every choice cuts deeper than steel. Chapter 76. Whispers in the halls. The city breathed like a living thing. Markets shouting, courtyards bustling, palaces gleaming in the sun. Yet beneath the noise ran a darker current. Whispers in corners, veiled glances in candlelit chambers, words carried by shadows rather than messengers. Herman walked the marble halls of the king's palace, staff at his side, wings folded close, tail flicking molten arcs that dimmed as though even his mark sensed the weight of intrigue. Lysara moved beside him, vines curled lightly against her arms, sensing every shift in the air. "Every stone here hides a secret," she murmured. "Even the walls carry whispers. Be wary, Herman. Power here is not measured by armies, but by words spoken in the dark." Herman exhaled slowly, then let them whisper. "We will listen." In the great council chamber, nobles and emissaries gathered, voices clashing like swords. Some demanded Herman's guidance, others questioned his right to stand among them, and a few spoke too carefully, their loyalty thin as smoke. The lord in crimson robes rose sharply. "Runeborn's mark may bend the flow of battle, but can it bend the greed of kings? We place our fate in a child of prophecy, yet his jungle power may drown us all." Herman's molten arcs flared faintly, wings shifting. "I did not come to drown your kingdoms," he said, his voice calm but firm. "I came to guard balance. If you fear that, perhaps you fear the balance within yourselves." Murmurs filled the chamber, some impressed, others uneasy. That night, Herman and Lysara walked the palace gardens, vines trailing softly through the dew. From the shadows, a cloaked figure emerged, voice low and urgent. "The Cabal listens." The figure whispered, "Their hands reach into your councils, their gold feeds your enemies, their whispers turn allies against you. The Shadow Commander was only their blade, the true hand still hides." Herman's mark flared, tail lashing molten arcs through the misty night air. "Then we find the hand," he said, "and break it." The figure bowed once, then melted back into shadow. Lysara's vines pulsed with unease. "You see, Herman, the threads tighten already. The Cabal plays a longer game. If we do not act, the kingdoms themselves may fracture before a single blade is drawn." Herman gazed across the garden, wings flexing, staff glowing faintly. "Then we act," he said. "No whispers shall outlast the heart. Let them weave their conspiracies. I will unmake what is forged in lies." The garden pulsed softly with moonlight, alive and watchful, as Herman Runeborn stepped deeper into the web of the wider world. Chapter 77. The hidden hand. The palace torchlight flickered, as if wary of the words it overheard. Herman walked the corridor lined with statues of past kings, each stone face grim, each shadow stretching long. Lysara paced beside him, vines curling along the marble floor, restless. His mark glowed faintly, tail lashing molten arcs in slow rhythm, sensing a presence nearby. "You feel it too," Lysara whispered, eyes that watch from the dark. "The Cabal is not far." At the council table, nobles debated furiously, alliances, borders, trade routes, but beneath the noise, Herman felt the undercurrent. A pause too sharp, a glance too long, an answer rehearsed. The king, weary and regal, leaned toward him. "You have strength, Herman Runeborn, but strength alone does not secure peace. There are forces in my court that even I cannot see. If you can bend fate, bend it now." Herman's wings flexed slightly. "Fate is not bent by decree, but by truth, and truth hides here, thick as shadow." That night Herman and Lysara followed whispers through the palace depths. Secret doors groaned open, hidden stairways wound beneath stone foundations. At the end of a torchlit passage, they found it a circle of robed figures, voices low, hands etched with runes black as oil. "The boy grows bold," one hissed. "The mark extends further," said another. "If it reaches his wrist, the prophecy may awaken in full. Then the child must be broken before balance tips," the third whispered, voice colder than the stones. Herman stepped forward, wings flaring, molten arcs lashing across the chamber. "If you seek to break me," he said, voice like steel, "you should not have spoken in whispers." The Cabal's robed figures turned as one, shadows rising behind them like living beasts. Their leader, face hidden, raised a staff carved with runes older than any kingdom. "Child of the Forbidden," the figure intoned, "you may carry the heart and the forge, but your destiny was written to end. Tonight, the unmaking begins, not of us, but of you." The chamber erupted, shadow and fire colliding, vines whipping against curses, molten arcs bending corrupted runes. Herman moved as one with Lysara, the heart pulsing in his chest, every strike deliberate, every defense a rhythm with the jungle itself. The robed figures scattered into smoke, leaving only their leader, who vanished into shadow with a promise. "The hidden hand will reach you again, Runeborn, and next time it will close." Silence fell, heavy and waiting. Lysara's vines curled close, trembling. "Now we know. The Cabal is real, and their hand moves everywhere. The Shadow Commander was only their weapon. This is their will." Herman exhaled, molten arcs, fading but steady. "Then I will bend their will," he said. "I am Runeborn, and no hand, hidden or not, will close upon me." Chapter 78. The web tightens. The city dawned restless, merchants shouting too loudly, guards pacing too quickly, and nobles whispering too softly. The battle in the hidden chamber had not gone unnoticed. The Cabal's presence lingered like smoke after a fire. Herman stood on the palace balcony, staff resting against the stone, wings folded but shimmering faintly, tail flicking molten arcs that hissed in the cool air. His mark pulsed slowly, as though tracking something unseen. "They flee, but not far," Lysara murmured, vines trailing against the balustrade. "The Cabal scatters, yet every thread still pulls toward the same web. They test your patience, Herman. They want you chasing shadows." Herman exhaled, molten arcs spiraling down his arm. "Then I'll make the shadows chase me. If they want to weave a web, I'll tear at its center." That morning, emissaries arrived in haste. Reports of sudden unrest across the kingdoms, grain stores burned in the west, border patrols slaughtered in the north, rumors of plague in the east. Too precise, too coordinated. The king slammed his hand on the table. "This is no coincidence. Someone orchestrates these crises, and always whispers return to you, Runeborn. Some say you bring stability, others say you are the storm itself." Herman's wings flexed, molten arcs glowing brighter. "They want the kingdoms to fear me, to doubt balance, to break their own alliances before I can strengthen them." That night, Herman walked through the city's underbelly, alleys where no banners flew, markets where no laws held sway. Lysara's vines probed the shadows, guiding him to the quietest places, where whispers turned into confessions. A frightened smuggler stammered under Herman's gaze, his eyes darting toward the molten glow of the mark. "They call themselves the Hidden Hand," he whispered. "They pay in gold older than our kingdoms. They buy silence, fear, loyalty, but their faces never shone, always robed, always watching." Herman leaned closer, tail flicking molten arcs that reflected in the smuggler's wide eyes. "Then listen closely. Tell them this, Runeborn hunts them now." By dawn, rumors spread like wildfire. The boy with the Raven Phoenix mark, the one who had bent battles and broken shadows, was no longer defending, he was hunting. The Cabal had cast their web. Herman Runeborn had stepped into it willingly, wings folded tight, staff in hand, molten arcs glowing brighter than the rising sun, and the web itself began to tremble. Chapter 79. The first strand breaks. The trail led Herman beyond the palace walls, through farmland scarred by fire and villages emptied overnight. Whispers guided his steps, threads of rumor and fear twisting into a single path. An abandoned fortress on the edge of the northern hills. Herman approached at dusk, staff in hand, wings folded close, but trembling with restrained energy, tail lashing molten arcs, but lit the grass in brief flashes. Lysara moved beside him, vines gliding silently along the earth, sensing danger buried deep. "This is no ruin," she murmured. "The stones breathe with magic. The Cabal has turned it into a nest." From the shadows of the fortress gates, figures emerged, robed, masked, their hands glowing with the same black runes Herman had seen in the palace chamber. Their leader raised a staff etched with symbols that pulsed like dying stars. "Runeborn," the figure hissed, voice echoing unnaturally. "You trespass where even kings dare not look. You should have stayed in your jungle. Now the web will close." Herman planted the anvil rune against the ground. Roots erupted from the earth, vines twisting into living whips, molten arcs spiraling from his mark. His wings flared wide, casting firelit shadows against the fortress wall. "Then close it," Herman said, his voice steady, "and watch it break." The clash was instant. Dark runes spun into the air, hissing like serpents. Molten arcs cut through them, redirecting the blasts back toward the robed figures. Lysara's vines wrapped around enemy staffs, snapping them like brittle twigs, while roots tore open the stone courtyard itself. The fortress walls groaned under the strain of magic colliding. Herman moved as though the heart itself guided every step, every strike. His tail lashed molten arcs that split shadow into smoke. His staff glowed with the forge's rhythm, and his mark extended in bright, searing light nearly to his wrist. One by one, the robed figures faltered, their shadows breaking under the relentless flow of jungle power. The leader staggered, staff cracking under Herman's strikes. With a final surge of molten arcs, Herman shattered the fortress gates, roots dragging the last defenders into the earth. When silence fell, only broken stone and scattered robes remained. Herman stood at the center, staff in hand, wings flexed, mark glowing like a brand in the twilight. Lysara touched his arm, vines curling protectively. "The first strand is broken, but the web remains. For every stronghold you strike, 3 more may rise." Herman exhaled, molten arcs dimming but steady. "Then I will break them all," he said, "one by one, until no shadow dares to whisper." The fortress collapsed behind him, smoke rising into the night sky, a beacon to kingdoms and conspirators alike. Herman Runeborn had struck the Cabal, and the world would not forget it. Chapter 80. The Cabal strikes back. The fortress still smoldered when the first whispers of retaliation reached Herman. Villagers on the road spoke of sudden storms in the south, of wells poisoned in the east, of children vanishing in the night, always swift, always silent, always signed with the same mark, a raven painted in black ash. On the palace steps, the king's voice thundered, "They strike not at armies but at the innocent. They bleed us through fear. Every house that burns, every child that disappears. Runeborn, they say you provoke this, that it is your hunt that feeds the fire." Herman's wings unfurled in anger, molten arcs flaring like chains broken. "Then let them look me in the eye before they whisper. If the Cabal wants to bleed the people, it will be with my fire on their hands." But the strike that came was not against villages or borders. It came at night, silent as a falling leaf. Herman awoke in his chamber to find the air heavy, thick with a chill that did not belong. Lysara's vines whipped against the walls, trembling. The mark on Herman's arm glowed fiercely, tail burning almost to his wrist. From the corner, a voice rasped, "The jungle child leaves his roots, but shadows follow." A figure stepped forward, cloaked and faceless, holding a shard of rune-carved glass. The shard pulsed with crimson light, and inside it flickered an image. Herman froze. It was his mother's face, not as he had seen her in visions of birth and sacrifice, but alive, chained, weeping, her eyes wide with terror. Lysara hissed, vines snapping toward the shard, but the figure raised a hand. Alive, the shadow whispered. Kept beyond reach, she is the bargain. End your hunt, Runeborn, or watch her die slowly again and again. The shard cracked, spilling a scream into the room, raw and real. Herman's molten arcs flared wildly, scorching the stone floor. His wings snapped open, eyes burning with a fire that threatened to consume even his own will. Lies, he growled, though his voice shook. She died in Runeski. The runesmiths told me. But did they tell you all? The figure hissed. Did they show you her body, Runeborn? Or did they bury the truth with their oaths? Choose your vengeance or your blood. The shard shattered into smoke, the figure dissolving with it, leaving only the echo of the scream. Herman stood frozen, staff trembling in his grip. Lysara pressed close, vines curling around his arm, grounding him against the storm raging inside. They seek to break you, she whispered. Whether truth or trick, they aim for your heart. Herman's jaw clenched, molten arcs pulsing in rhythm with his fury. Then they have made their mistake. They think my heart a weakness. He lifted his staff, wings spreading wide. But it is the forge that shapes my fire. The hunt was no longer for shadows. It was for answers and blood. Chapter 81, Echoes of the Mother. The night after the shard's vision, Herman did not sleep. His mark burned ceaselessly, the tail nearly reaching his wrist, each pulse like a heartbeat not his own. He stood in the forge hall of the runesmiths, flames casting long shadows across steel and stone. Master Veinar watched him in silence, hammer resting against his shoulder. The runesmith's eyes, older than kingdoms, carried weight heavier than steel. You've seen something, Veinar rumbled. Something that shakes the forge of your resolve. Herman turned, staff trembling in his grip. They showed me her face, Master, my mother, not dead, alive, chained. The forge fire hissed, as if offended. Veinar's brow furrowed, deep as carved stone. Her sacrifice was the reason you lived. The runes carved her life into yours, to believe otherwise dangerous, but not impossible. Herman pressed, wings flexing in agitation. If the Cabal has threads that reach through kingdoms, why not through death itself? If she lives, I must find her. Lysara stepped from the shadows, vines coiling tight around his wrist. Herman, listen, this is what they want, to turn your strength into doubt, your destiny into distraction. Her words struck, but the scream from the shard still echoed in his bones. Then I need truth, Herman said, not whispers, not half-answers. If the runesmiths know more, I demand it now. The forge hall grew silent, the hammers at rest. Runesmiths gathered, their massive forms circling, the air thick with the gravity of choice. Master Veinar's voice lowered, heavy with reluctance. There are records, he admitted, runes not meant for your eyes, secrets buried in the stone beneath Runeski. They speak of her, of the betrayal, of a bond that even death could not unmake. Herman's molten arcs flared, scattering sparks across the floor. Then take me there. By torchlight, they descended into caverns carved with runes that glowed faintly, as if remembering every oath ever spoken. The walls whispered of bloodlines, of bargains, of grief hidden beneath duty. At the deepest chamber, a single slab of black stone pulsed faintly, with runes older than the jungle itself. Veinar laid a massive hand against it. Here lies what remains of her. The runes took her life. They swore her spirit into the curse that shields our land. Yet, his voice faltered. There is one fragment missing, a tether unaccounted for, a shadow the runes will not name. Herman stepped closer, mark burning bright, tail trembling at the edge of his wrist. His mother's name carved itself against the stone in faint red light, as though answering his presence. Lysara whispered, fear woven through her voice. If she lives, Herman, She is bound by forces older than either of us. The Cabal did not lie. They twisted truth, and truth is the sharper blade. Herman touched the stone, the mark-seared light bursting up his arm, and for a moment he heard it, her voice, faint, broken, but real. Herman. He staggered back, fire blazing across his arm, wings flaring wide. She lives, he breathed, somewhere, somehow, and I will find her. The runesmiths bowed their heads, as if the anvil of fate had struck once more. Chapter 82. Beyond the known lands, the revelation in the stone chamber left Herman restless, his mark burning as though it longed to stretch past skin and bone. He could not remain in Runeski, not while the echo of his mother's voice lingered in his mind. Maps unfurled across the council table, kingdoms inked in detail, rivers traced in careful lines, mountains etched with pride. But at the edges, where parchment frayed, only empty space stretched, unknown, unwritten. That is where you'll find nothing but death, warned Vaynar, his hand heavy upon the map's blank margin. The runes show no paths there. The world ends beyond those lines. Or begins again, Herman countered, molten arcs dancing restlessly along his arm. If the Cabal hides her, it will not be where kings look. It will be where no one dares. The king, grim-faced, leaned forward. The people cry for you, Runeborn. The Cabal spreads terror, and your hunt for shadows risks abandoning them. Herman's wings unfurled, their firelight painting the council in red-gold glow. Protect them if you must, but understand if the Cabal binds my mother, then they bind me as well. Break her chains, and the prophecy itself may change. At dawn he left the palace walls, Lysara at his side. The jungle whispered their passing, vines clearing paths, roots guiding their steps. They crossed borders where banners fell silent, passed through wastelands where war had drained color from the earth, and then the land ended. Before them stretched a sea of mist, endless, alive with whispers that slithered through the air. Shapes moved within mountains, shifting like waves, towers dissolving like smoke, rivers vanishing into nothing. Lysara's vines curled back in fear. This is not land, Herman. This is the edge of truth itself. Herman planted the anvil rune against the soil, molten arcs striking sparks across the mist. Then truth is where I walk. He stepped forward. The mist recoiled around him, the glow of his mark carving a path that should not exist. Each step tore away illusion, revealing glimpses of something vast, ruins of a city older than memory, statues carved with the raven phoenix crest, runes etched in a language even runesmiths had forgotten. And in the distance beyond mist, beyond ruin rose a black citadel, its spires clawed at the sky, its gates wide as mountains, and from its highest tower pulsed a light that matched the rhythm of his mark. Lysara whispered, trembling, "If she is anywhere, she is there." Herman tightened his grip on the staff, wings spreading wide, molten arcs flaring like dawn breaking through endless night. "Then that is where the Cabal's web ends," he said, "and where I begin." The mist closed behind them, swallowing the world they knew. Ahead lay the uncharted, the forbidden, the truth. Chapter 83. The Black Citadel. The citadel loomed like a wound upon the horizon, its towers jagged, its walls shifting, as though built from shadow itself. The mist that guarded it clung close, reluctant to release its prize. Herman and Lysara stood before its gate, a gate vast enough to swallow armies whole, carved with runes that hissed like serpents when touched by light. His mark glowed brighter, tail searing fully to his wrist now, each pulse answering the citadel's beat. "This place breathes," Lysara whispered, vines curling close in defense. "Not stone, not steel, something older, something alive." Herman stepped forward, planting the staff against the gate. Molten arcs flared, striking the runes, bending their force until the doors groaned open. The sound was no creak of iron, but a wail, as if the citadel mourned its own betrayal. Inside, darkness stretched unbroken, No torches lit the way, no banners marked dominion, only silence, broken by whispers that slipped between the stones. Runeborn, child of betrayal, unmake what was forged. The voice echoed through every wall, sometimes his mother's, sometimes the Cabal's, sometimes his own. They walked through halls vast enough to dwarf palaces, yet empty, lined with statues of faceless figures holding broken chains. Each step echoed too long, as though the citadel itself listened. At the heart of the fortress lay a chamber, circular and immense, floor carved with a web of runes that pulsed with black fire. In its center, bound by chains of shadow, stood a figure cloaked in rags, her head lifted. Herman froze, his molten arcs lashed uncontrolled, wings snapping wide. The face beneath the hood was hers, the face he had seen in visions, the face he had heard scream. His mother, mother, he breathed, the word breaking from him like flame from dry wood. Her eyes, once gentle, now burned with black fire. Chains tightened across her arms, runes crawling up her skin. When she spoke, her voice was both hers and not hers. Herman, my son, they hold me, but each chain is mine as well. To break them, you must break me. The Cabal's laughter rolled through the chamber, cold and endless. Shadows bled from the walls, robed figures forming a circle around the bound woman. Their leader stepped forward, staff raised high. Welcome, Runeborn. The voice hissed. You sought truth. Here it is. The mother you worshipped was never lost. She is the core of our web, the forge of our power, the prophecy made flesh. To unmake us, you must unmake her. The bound woman screamed, chains rattling, runes flaring bright. Herman staggered back, molten arcs blazing uncontrolled, torn between fire and blood. Lysara's vines lashed in panic. Herman, choose, she cried. If you strike, you may save kingdoms, or destroy the only family you have. The chamber shook, shadow and fire colliding, the prophecy pressing down like an anvil, and Herman Runeborn stood at its center, destiny burning at his wrist, the weight of his bloodline in his hands. Chapter 84. Chains of the blood. The chamber trembled, runes pulsing like veins beneath the floor. Herman's wings spread wide, molten arcs spiraling in furious bursts, tail now fully extended to his wrist and glowing like a living flame. His mother's eyes locked on his, burning with agony and warning. Chains of shadow tightened around her, feeding on her struggle. Each link bore a rune, the same raven phoenix crest that marked his skin. Do not come closer, she cried, her voice breaking through the Cabal's laughter. The chains feed on bloodline. Every step you take strengthens them. The robed leader's staff cracked the floor, sending black fire racing through the runes. See, Runeborn, she is not prisoner alone, she is prison itself. The prophecy you carry was birthed in her veins. To free the world, you must end your blood. Lysara's vines coiled around Herman's arm, trembling. Don't listen. This is their snare. They twist truth until it cuts both ways. But Herman's mark pulsed furiously, arcs bending toward the chains, as if drawn by recognition. He felt the tug deep in his bones, a rhythm that was both his heartbeat and hers. He stepped forward. The chains writhed, drinking his fire, glowing brighter. His mother screamed, her body convulsing as shadow tried to devour her light. Stop, Lysara cried, dragging against him, but Herman planted the anvil rune into the stone. Its glow pushed back against the black web, molten arcs searing through the floor. I will not choose between blood and destiny, Herman growled. If prophecy says one must break, then I will break prophecy itself. The chamber shook violently. Chains snapped taut, runes sparked like lightning, and the robed figures faltered, shadows recoiling from the surge. The leader snarled, slamming his staff down again. Fool child, to unmake what was forged is to unmake yourself. Then watch, Herman roared. His molten arcs flared into a storm, wings beating like thunder, staff striking the rune web. Shadow chains cracked, sparks of light bursting free. his mother's scream rising into a piercing note that split shadow and fire alike. For a heartbeat, the chamber froze. Half the chains shattered, dissolving into mist. The Cabal staggered, their circle broken. His mother slumped, breathing ragged, eyes flickering between fire and shadow. "You've weakened them," Lysara gasped, vines whipping across the floor. But she's still bound, half theirs, half yours. The leader hissed, retreating into the shadows. "So be it, you claim half the mother. We keep the rest, but remember this, Runeborn, every chain you break binds you tighter. You will not save her without losing yourself." The Cabal dissolved into smoke, leaving only silence, the shattered half-chains writhing on the floor. Herman knelt beside his mother, touching her arm. For an instant, her eyes softened, voice faint. "My son, you came." Then she collapsed, still chained, half free, half lost. Herman rose, staff blazing, wings spread. His mark pulsed furiously, tail aflame to his wrist. "This web will break," he swore into the silence. "Every chain, every shadow, even if it costs me." The Black Citadel shuddered, as though listening and waiting. Chapter 85. The price of breaking the silence after battle was worse than the clash itself. The Black Citadel's walls no longer laughed, no longer mocked, only pulsed faintly, like a wounded beast watching its hunter. Herman knelt beside his mother, chains of shadow still binding her arms and chest, half shattered, half glowing with fire. Her breathing was shallow, her eyes closed, but her presence pressed against his mark, like a heartbeat echoing his own. Lysara crouched opposite him, vines tracing the cracks in the floor. "You broke half. That alone nearly tore you apart. To break the rest," she hesitated, voice trembling, "you might not survive." Herman looked at the glowing tail of his mark, now fully extended, heat radiating like a brand. "Then I'll burn until nothing's left. I won't leave her in chains." A low rumble stirred from the walls, ancient runes flickering. The voice of Master Vaynar carried faintly through the stone, an echo summoned by Herman's fire. "Runeborn, hear me. To break those chains you must pay the forge's price. Blood for blood, fire for fire. To free her fully you may be bound in her place." The words struck like a hammer against steel. Herman rose slowly, wings spreading in defiance. "Then let the forge take what it will. I was born in betrayal, but I'll not live in surrender." His staff struck the floor, molten arcs spiraling outward, reaching for the chains. They writhed, shrieking like serpents, drinking his fire greedily. The citadel shook, spires groaning, as if the entire fortress shared in the chain's pain. His mother stirred, eyes opening briefly, shadow and fire warred within them. "Herman, no. If you take my chains, you take my curse. You unmake yourself." "Better me than you," Herman said, voice unshaken though his body trembled. "The prophecy is mine to bear." The chains lashed at him, searing his skin, wrapping around his arm, his wings. Molten arcs cracked and bled across the floor. For an instant, he felt himself splitting half boy, half shadow. Lysara's vines shot forward, wrapping both him and his mother. "No," she cried, tears streaming. "If you bind yourself, I'll not let the world take you. We'll find another way." Herman staggered, caught between fire and shadow, between duty and heart. The chamber glowed with violent light, the Cabal's magic pressing from afar, testing his resolve. At last he wrenched free, gasping, his staff dimmed, wings trembling. The chains hissed, still intact, but weakened further. His mother slumped again, unconscious but alive. Herman stood, fury burning in his eyes. "If the price is my life, I'll pay it. But not yet, not before I've shattered the Cabal, root and shadow." The citadel quaked, as if answering his vow. Cracks spread along the rune web floor, and somewhere deep inside the fortress, a new gate opened. Lysara whispered, gripping his arm tight. "They're leading you deeper, Herman, into the heart of their power." "Then that's where I go," he said, wings flaring, to tear out the heart of the web itself. Chapter 86. Descent into Shadow. The newly opened gate yawned wide, stairs spiraling downward into a darkness that seemed to breathe. The sound of chains rattled faintly from below, not his mother's, but countless others, a chorus of the bound. Herman tightened his grip on the staff, molten arcs flickering in restless bursts along his arm. His wings flexed once, scattering embers into the air. If this is their heart, then every step down is a strike against it. Lysara's vines slid along the walls, cautious, their tips recoiling from runes etched deep into the stone. These runes, they're older than even the jungle. This fortress isn't just Cabal work, it's built on something buried, something that should have stayed buried. The descent lasted longer than any palace hall, longer than any cavern of Runeski. The air grew heavy, thick with the taste of iron and ash. Whispers pressed close, brushing Herman's ears. Sometimes his mother's voice, sometimes his own, always just out of reach. At last, the stairs ended in a cavern vast as a kingdom. Pillars of black stone rose into shadow, each carved with runes that pulsed faintly. Between them hung chains, hundreds, thousands stretching across the cavern like a web, and in each chain faint shapes writhed, spirits bound and twisted, their voices echoing in endless lament. Lysara's hand shot to her mouth. Gods, this is their forge, not of steel, of souls. Herman's molten arcs burned hotter, his mark blazing bright, tail lashing against his wrist. He stepped forward, wings spreading wide. Then I'll unmake this forge. The cavern stirred. From the shadows between the pillars, figures emerged, not robed Cabal members this time, but constructs of shadow and rune, their forms towering, their movements stiff, their faces carved from blank stone. Their eyes glowed with the same black fire as the chains. One construct stepped forward, voice booming like thunder. Runeborn, child of the forbidden, you seek to tear the root from the world, but roots cut too deep bleed the tree itself. Herman raised his staff, molten arcs flaring into a storm. Then I'll bleed it dry if I must. The constructs advanced, their heavy steps shaking the cavern, chains rattling above like thunder. Herman moved first, wings snapping open, staff striking the ground. Molten arcs surged outward, vines bursting from the stone at Lysara's call, wrapping the constructs in a storm of fire and root. The cavern became a battlefield of shadow and flame. Chains rattled wildly, spirits screaming in chorus. The constructs shattered one by one under Herman's relentless strikes, but with each blow, the runes on the walls glowed brighter, as though the citadel itself was feeding on the fight. When the last construct fell, silence followed, broken only by the rattling chains above. Herman stood at the cavern's center, chest heaving, wings dim but steady. And then, from the farthest shadow, a figure stepped forward, taller than the rest, its body not stone nor robe, but a shifting mix of shadow and fire. Its eyes burned with the same mark on Herman's arm. You fight against yourself, Runeborn, it said, voice a mirror of his own. Break the chains, and you break your blood. The cavern shook, runes blazing, chains tightening. Herman lifted his staff, jaw set. Then I'll fight myself too, he said. Chapter 87. The shadow of Runeborn. The figure of shadow fire stood across the cavern, its wings jagged flame, its staff a twisted reflection of Herman's own. The mark on its arm glowed crimson black, tail coiled like a serpent. It smiled with Herman's face. You were forged to unmake, the shadow said, voice smooth, mocking. Not to protect, not to love. Every chain you broke tied me stronger. I am the truth beneath your fire. Lysara's vines bristled, wrapping tight around Herman's wrist. Don't listen, this is their trick. But Herman felt it, the pull between them. Each beat of his heart echoed in the shadow, each flicker of molten arc mirrored by its crimson black flame. Herman raised his staff, wings flaring wide. Then I'll burn my own reflection. The cavern erupted, shadow, Herman lunged, staff clashing against his own, sparks of fire and darkness spraying across the rune web floor. Every strike mirrored, every wing beat answered, every molten arc bent back upon him. It was like fighting his own heartbeat. Lysara lashed vines into the fray, but they shriveled instantly against the shadow's fire. "It feeds on you," she cried. "The more you fight, the stronger it grows." Herman gritted his teeth, wings beating hard, molten arcs blazing brighter. "Then I'll grow faster." He struck with fury, staff glowing, arcs bending against the shadow's strikes. Their blows shook the cavern, chains rattling violently above, spirits screaming in a chorus of pain. The shadow laughed, a sound that twisted like broken glass. "Do you not see? You are prophecy's chain. You are born to betray. The more you resist, the tighter I bind." Herman's mark seared, pain lancing through his arm. The tail writhed, glowing like molten iron, ready to split his flesh. His vision blurred, yet through it he saw his mother's face, bound above, her voice echoing faintly. "My son, you are not forged, you are born." Herman staggered, the words cutting through the shadow's laughter. "Not forged, born." He grounded his staff, wings folding inward. Instead of striking, he lowered the weapon. The shadow hesitated, its grin faltering. "I am not your mirror," Herman said, voice steady. "I am not their weapon. I am not you." Molten arcs flared, not outward, but inward, spiraling through his mark, through his blood, sealing his fire as his own. The shadow screamed, its form unraveling as the link snapped. Chains overhead shattered, a dozen breaking at once, light spilling into the cavern. Spirits wailed and dissolved into freedom. The shadow collapsed into smoke, its last words hissing through the dark. "Break enough chains, and you will break yourself." Silence fell. Herman dropped to one knee, breathing hard, staff scorched, wings trembling. But the shadow was gone. Lysara rushed to him, vines wrapping his arm. "You beat it, not by fire but by choice." Herman looked up at the chains above, more still unbroken, his mother still bound among them. His mark burned steady, no longer writhing. "I'll break them all," he whispered, rising again. "But on my terms, not theirs." The Citadel groaned, as if realizing it had lost control of its greatest weapon. Chapter 88. The Forge of Souls. The cavern shifted as the shadow dissolved, its smoke seeping into the cracks of the floor. Runes flickered in protest, their glow faltering like embers doused in water. For the first time, the Black Citadel felt uncertain. Herman stood tall despite the tremor in his legs. His wings still burned, though faintly, their edges ragged with exhaustion. The staff in his hand was scorched black, arcs crawling over it like restless lightning. Above him, countless chains still rattled, each binding a soul. Spirits pressed against their bonds, faint eyes turning toward him, pleading, desperate. Lysara's voice was soft, but carried through the cavern. "If you free them all, this place will collapse. The souls are what hold the Citadel upright." Herman's gaze hardened. "Then let it collapse. A cage should never stand." He stepped forward, each stride echoing across the rune web. As he walked, his mark pulsed beacon and brand. Wherever it flared, a few chains cracked, sparks spilling like stars into the dark. The spirits drifted free, sighing in relief, fading into the unseen. The Citadel shook, more cracks split the cavern walls, dust falling in sheets. And then a voice rose, deeper than stone, heavier than iron. Not the shadow this time, something older. The root Lysara had feared. "You would undo what was forged, child of fire and betrayal. You touched the core of worlds. Do you know the cost?" The floor opened at the cavern's far end, revealing a pit of molten light, brighter than any forge flame Herman had ever seen. Chains stretched down into it, endless, as though the souls of the dead themselves were fed into the fire. The air reeked of sorrow and iron. "This is the Forge of Souls," Lysara whispered, her vines curling back as if afraid. the source of their power. The Cabal feeds on the bound. If you shatter this, Herman spread his wings, the heat of the pit reflecting in his eyes. Then I end them, root and shadow. The pit stirred, and from it rose not one figure, but many faces of the dead, twisting together into a colossal form. A titan of chained spirits, its body writhing, its roar shaking every pillar. Lysara's breath caught. That's not a guardian, that is the forge, every soul bound into one. The titan raised a hand, chains whipping from its arm like lashes. They cracked toward Herman, the force of them shattering stone pillars like twigs. Herman braced, staff raised, molten arcs spiraling outward into a shield of fire. The first lash struck fire against chain, and the cavern exploded in light and thunder. The impact hurled him back, wings folding around him to shield his body. He slammed into the ground, molten arcs dimming for a heartbeat before flaring brighter in fury. He rose again, battered but unbroken, staff glowing like the anvil of the runesmiths. "You want me to know the cost," he shouted, voice echoing through the cavern. "Then watch me pay it." With that, he surged forward, wings blazing, charging the Titan of Souls head-on. Chapter 89. The Titan of Chains. The Titan loomed, a nightmare of iron links and faces that cried without voices. Chains hung like muscles, binding one soul to the next, writhing together to form its colossal frame. Its eyes burned with thousands of tormented lights, and when it roared, the sound carried the grief of ages. Herman ran toward it, molten arcs leaping along his staff, wings driving him like a comet of fire. Each strike he swung shattered links, sparks scattering, yet the chains writhed and healed again, feeding on the pit's molten light. Every strike makes it stronger. Lysara shouted, vines lashing out to snag the floor and fling herself upward. "It devours the pain you give it." The Titan lashed out with a chain arm, smashing a pillar where she had stood. The cavern quaked, more cracks spidering across the ceiling. Herman skidded back, sparks scattering beneath his boots, his mark seared, tail flaring along his wrist. He clenched his teeth against the pain. If fire feeds it, then fire is not enough. He grounded his staff, wings folding close. The Titan advanced, each step shaking the cavern. Chains lashed again, striking toward him like serpents. This time Herman didn't strike. He caught. His staff hooked one chain, molten arcs gripping it, burning into its links. He didn't fight against it, he pulled. The Titan staggered, confusion flickering in its shifting face. Herman pulled harder, dragging the chain toward him. Souls writhed along it, their faint eyes wide with terror and hope. "I don't burn you," Herman said, voice steady through the roar. "I free you." His wings flared, molten arcs rushing down the staff, not in fire but in release. The chain shattered, not in sparks but in light. The souls along it dissolved into freedom, their cries softening into silence. The Titan roared in pain, its massive form flickering as though a part of its body had been torn away. Lysara gasped. "That's it. Don't fight it as a weapon, undo it as a prison." Herman grinned fiercely, turning to the next chain that lashed at him. He caught it again, dragging it close, arcs spiraling with resolve. Another shatter, another cluster of souls freed. The Titan writhed, each release weakening it, breaking its massive form apart piece by piece. It swung wildly now, smashing pillars, the cavern trembling on the edge of collapse. Dust rained from above. The rune web across the ceiling flickered and dimmed. Herman braced, sweat burning into his eyes, lungs searing with every breath. He caught chain after chain, his arms trembling with strain, wings flaring in defiance. With each shatter, light filled the cavern, spirits rising like stars into the dark. Finally, only one chain remained thicker, darker, wound deep into the Titan's chest. The root chain, the one that bound the Forge of Souls together. The Titan staggered, half gone, its countless faces shrieking. It raised its remaining arm, chain blazing black. Herman's wings spread wide, his staff blazing brighter than ever before. This ends now. He leapt, arcs flaring like a sun, and drove the staff straight into the Titan's chest. Chain screamed. The cavern exploded in light. Chapter 90. Shattering the root, the staff struck home, piercing the Titan's chest, where the root chain writhed like a living heart. For an instant, everything froze. Herman, the Titan, the cavern itself. Time seemed to hang on the single sound of cracking iron. Then the chain screamed. The noise wasn't metal, it was alive, millions of voices bound into one, tearing free in agony and relief. The cavern walls blazed with runes, then shattered under their own light. The Titan convulsed, its massive form splitting apart, souls bursting out like stars from a broken sky. They swirled upward, through the cracks of the citadel, through the ceiling itself, vanishing into freedom. Herman clung to his staff, wings flared against the storm of light. His mark burned hotter than ever before, its tail blazing all the way down his wrist, glowing with every soul that passed through him to escape. Too many, Lysara cried, shielding her face with her vines. You'll tear yourself apart. But Herman stood firm, every muscle screaming, every breath fire. Let them go. The root chain shattered. The Titan collapsed into dust and light, its roar fading into silence. The Forge of Souls was undone, and with it, the citadel screamed. The floor split open, molten light surging upward. Pillars crumbled like brittle wood, rune webs tearing apart, sparks cascading like rain. The fortress itself was unraveling, its stolen power pouring out into the night. Herman staggered, wings flickering, staff dimming in his grasp. His knees buckled, but Lysara caught him, wrapping vines around his waist, dragging him back from the collapsing pit. We have to leave. Now, she shouted, voice barely audible over the thunder of falling stone. Herman forced his eyes upward. Amid the collapsing chains, one still hung high above, his mother's. It wavered, glowing faintly, half broken. She dangled unconscious, her form outlined by the chaos. Herman's chest clenched. He spread his wings, though they trembled. Not without her. The cavern groaned. A spire fell, smashing into the pit with a spray of molten fire. Herman, you'll die, Lysara cried, clutching his arm. He looked at her, eyes fierce despite his exhaustion. Then, I'll die reaching her. Before she could stop him, he leapt into the air, wings carrying him through smoke and falling stone, molten arcs trailing behind like comet fire. He rose higher toward the last chain, toward the woman who had named him, toward the final bond, yet to be broken. You've just heard the shattering of the Forge of Souls, the climax of Runeborn's sixth part, where Herman faced not just the Cabal but the shadow of himself. His mother's chains still hang, half broken, half bound, and his vow burns brighter than ever. No web, no prophecy, no shadow will decide his fate. I'm Rob, your host, and this is Audible Archives. If this journey gripped you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support keeps these legends alive. The story of Runeborn continues, but for now the Black Citadel crumbles, and the world waits for what Herman will break next.